Surah An-Nur is one of the most beautiful surahs of the Quran. It was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ later on in the Madani period. It also deals with social values. How does a Muslim community, what principles do they have to live by so they don't become a bunch of hypocrites, right? Because a healthy body, if you don't take care of it, it's going to get sick. Just like that, a Muslim community has to be healthy. And if you don't take care of it, if you don't take certain precautions, if you don't make sure certain measures are taken, then that society is going to become sick, right? So Allah revealed a number of things in this surah that keep the Muslim ummah from getting sick from the inside. And of course, think about someone who has to fight an outside enemy. If the body itself is sick, you're not able to face the enemy on the outside. It's dealing with what keeps a Muslim ummah and what keeps a Muslim community from becoming sick. All of the rules that Allah gave in this surah, one of their purposes is to preserve Allah's light in our hearts. Like, if you abide by these rules, then the light that Allah has put inside of you that connects you to Him will be preserved. And if you don't take these laws, particularly the laws of Surah An-Nur, there's going to be a darkness inside you, and there's going to be a darkness around you and me. In our community also, it's going to spread. So Allah Azza wa Jal said, He says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu la tadkhulu buyutan ghayra buyutikum hatta tasta'nisu. He says, those of you who have faith, those of you who claim to believe, don't enter homes that are not your own unless you can sense that you are wanted. Now the basic idea is, obviously, you don't walk into somebody else's house until you ring the bell, or until you knock on the door. Or even if you see the door open, you don't just walk in. That's just, everybody knows that, it's common sense. But Allah goes a step above, not just saying you should knock on the door or you should get permission before you enter. He said, hatta tasta'nisu, until you can sense that you are wanted. In other words, you have a friend, you know that he goes to work, comes home at 8 o'clock, he's probably tired, then he's going to have dinner, maybe some time with his family, and by 10 o'clock he's probably going to pass out. You should have the sense to know that at 2 in the morning, you should not be, hey bro, I was wondering if you want to hang out. And then when he comes out like this, you say, it's not a bad time, right? You should have the common sense to know that that's not a time when you are wanted. That's not an appropriate time. Or for instance, you know that the husband is at work. That's not a time for you to show up when you know only the wife is at home, and then show up and say, hey, I wanted to drop something off. No, drop it off at a time when you're actually wanted. So first of all, have the sense of when is it appropriate to go to somebody's home. And the word bayt, which is a common word for home, actually comes from the verb bata. And bata means to spend the night. And the idea behind the word bayt is the night is a time for great privacy. So the idea being, not just that you don't go to somebody's home when you're not wanted, but actually don't enter into people's privacy when you know it's not wanted. Don't pry into people's lives. Now your home is on your phone. You're dealing with home matters on your phone. You're talking to somebody, you're exchanging WhatsApp messages or whatever, and your friend comes over from behind your shoulder and he's like, just kind of poking over, what you doing? That's private. That's part of their home now. Don't just peek into somebody else's private matters unless you are what? You're wanted. The idea of preserving privacy of the other. The idea of preserving privacy of the other is where this conversation starts. That's not the only instruction in this ayah, it's the first instruction of this ayah. The kinds of questions you ask them, or the kinds of conversations you have with them, you should have the sense to know, should I even be asking this question? Is that a wanted question? Like, some people, they'll go to a married couple that's been married for a few years, and they'll go to them and say, so when are you going to have a baby? Right? Is that a question they want? Is that something they want to hear? Or when's your daughter going to get married? God, she's getting old. Is that a wanted question? Or somebody's been out of a job, so still no job, huh? These are not wanted questions. You should have the sense that if they let you into their home, they let you into their safe place, that your tongue And your eyes are actually not going to cause them any harm. That the things you say, that the conversations you have are safe for them. That's why they let you into their sanctuary. Now the thing with the Prophet ﷺ is people loved him so much that they almost forgot that he's also a person. So when they see him, they just want to ask him a question, right? They just want to talk to him. So Sahaba would come over to his house all the time. And when you're sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, you don't want to leave, right? You just want to stay. And the Prophet ﷺ is too nice to tell them to leave. So they're sitting there and they're talking to the Prophet ﷺ, and he's answering them, and he's talking back to them, and he's giving them responses, and he's being a courteous host until Quran came and said, get out. You're disturbing Allah's messenger. He was too nice to say it himself. He wouldn't say it himself, and Allah revealed to the Sahaba, you can't do that to him. You need to leave. You need to observe his privacy too. Similarly, in social gatherings, two people are having a conversation, right? And there's a lot of people having different conversations, but two people are having a conversation. And you see this, one of these people is someone you know. Well, what do? You interrupt their conversation, hey, assalamu alaikum. And the person they're already talking to are like, what just happened? And you start a new conversation with them as if that conversation didn't matter. There was no courtesy or, is this wanted right now? Is this interruption okay? Because you can let them know that you're here, they have peripheral vision, they can see that you're there, and they can say to the friend they're having a conversation with, hold on a second, let me just say salam to this one, I know him, or I know her. And they say salam, and then they come back to this conversation. That's courtesy, isn't it? So the idea of hatta tastatnisu is a very powerful one. It's actually taking into consideration, am I or you being disruptive? Are we being rude? Are we being intrusive? Are we too curious about somebody else's personal life when we're having conversations with them? Are we saying things that are not, they wouldn't want us to say those kinds of things or ask us those kinds of questions? That's actually part of the sense that's captured inside hatta tasta'nisu. Then Allah goes a step further. وَتُسَلِّمُوا عَلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Don't walk in until you say salam to the whole family. Sallama alayhi, to say assalamu alaikum. But it's much more than that, isn't it? Saying assalamu alaikum means what? I'm declaring that I want peace and safety for all of you. I want Allah's peace to come on you. For sure, I have nothing but peace for you. So I'm not coming into your home to gather private information that I'm going to use at some other party. You know what I found out when I went to their house? Then you're not safe. Once you said salam, you're not there with prying eyes. You're not there to probe. You're not there to cause any sort of harm. You know, sometimes there are people that are friends with each other or they're part of a social circle, but on the inside they all hate each other, but they still all go to the same weddings. And they still all sit at the same tables. And they still, assalamu alaikum, and I hate your guts. I can't stand you, but there's like smiley salams and pictures being taken. And then later on, you know what this one was wearing? You know what they were saying? You know who they were sitting with? You know what? Oh my God. It's like enemies on a battlefield. The moment you say salam to someone's family and you walk in, whether it's their wedding, gathering, or it's some aqiqah or some iftar or whatever, when you go to somebody's house and you said salam, then nothing from your tongue in front of them or behind them, nothing with your eyes or your thoughts can be something unsafe for them. Allah says, don't even walk into their home if that's not your intention. Don't even walk into their home. First of all, go when you're wanted. And second of all, make sure you're a source of peace for that family. And declare it by saying assalamu alaikum. That salam is a big thing. It's a promise you made. I will never cause you harm. I declare that I don't want to cause you any harm. You're safe with me. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil'uqud. Those of you who have faith, fulfill binding agreements. You and I have to remember, the fact of saying assalamu alaikum is a binding agreement. Al-Muslimu man salima an-nas min lisanihi wa yadihi. The Muslim is the one from whom the people are safe from his hands and his tongue. So in our social gatherings, we have to develop a new kind of sensitivity. And if you are going into such gatherings and later on there's a commentary happening within your household, you can't be a part of that because you made a promise to Allah. You fulfilled an ayah of the Quran. حَتَّى تَسْتَأْنِسُوا وَتُسَلِّمُوا عَلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Then he says, ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. And that's better for you if you can make an effort to remember. What that means is, it's not something easy to remember. This is one of those instructions that's very easily forgotten. So Allah says, this is better for you. It's not even better for them, it's better for you. It means it will preserve light inside you. And it means if you and I aren't abiding by this, and we are engaged in talking about others, especially when they invite us over, when we are over in their homes, and we do such things, then we are putting a darkness inside of ourselves. We're actually darkening our own hearts. And we're becoming a corrupt Muslim society. Then he goes further, Allah Azza wa Jalla, and says, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا فِيهَا أَحَدًا. And if you don't find anybody there, meaning if you come to somebody's home, you ring the bell, and you don't find anybody there, or you ask 3 times. In one narration, somebody came to the house of Umar radiallahu anhu and asked if he's there, and he asked 3 times. This person asked 3 times, and he didn't hear a response, so he left. And then later on, Umar didn't hear him. He didn't actually hear him. And he said, what? Call him back. And he said, why'd you leave? He said, I asked 3 times, so I left. I heard the Prophet say that you should ask 3 times and then leave. Right? He said, really? You better verify that, because if it's not from the Prophet, I'm going to beat you up. So he had to get other witnesses to say, actually, that's what the Prophet said. So what we learn is the Prophet ﷺ says, a recommendation from the Prophet ﷺ is, knock how many times? 3 times. If you're going to ring the bell, ring it 3 times. Gently, courteously, give it a little bit. Maybe they didn't hear you, give it a little bit again. Maybe they didn't hear you, give it a little bit again. And that's it, that's done. Don't go back to that. It's over with. Now you can leave. Sometimes there are people that invite you to an iftar, for example, right? And there's guests coming. Every 2 minutes there's somebody ringing the bell. And they can't keep up because they're passing out plates and they're doing other stuff, so they can't keep up. So they leave the door open. They leave the door open for you to walk in, right? Now, one of the things you can do is, you can say, is everything, can I walk in? Can I come in? Instead of ringing the bell? Is it okay to come in? And they can say, yeah, and you can come in. Or if you can text them ahead of time or get some sort of permission, even then have the sensitivity. He says if you come to a home and there's nobody there, don't walk in, don't invade, don't look inside. Okay, I didn't walk in, but I just looked inside. No, don't look inside. You're not wanted. Your eyes aren't wanted. Your tongue isn't wanted. Your presence isn't wanted. The same way, if somebody left their phone at the table and they say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And they go, wash their hands, and they got a text message. You're like, because, they left it there, so it's fair game. No, it's not. That's also part of that's their privacy, isn't it? Don't look. Don't enter into a space that's not yours. After this, Allah says, وَإِن قِيلَ لَكُمْ مُرْجِعُوا. When you are told, listen to this, when you're told, go back. You don't say, huh? Go back? What did you say? No. When you're told go back, farji'u, go back. And go back with no hard feelings. Just go back. Realize that you're overstepped and don't make this difficult for people. Allah says if you can do that, huwa azka lakum. That's purer for you. Allah did not say this is the courtesy you're doing to someone else. Allah says for the one who's leaving, you're doing yourself a favor. You're purifying yourself. You're cleansing yourself. And this is a spiritually beneficial thing. Again, I say, when we don't do these things, it darkens our hearts. These are spiritual remedies. They're not just laws of Islam. Allahu bima ta'maluna alim. And Allah knows what you're up to. Allah knows what you do. These simple, beautiful regulations in Surah An-Nur, every single one of them is there to protect us and preserve our ummah and its integrity. And we overlook some of these very basic mannerisms. If these were insignificant, they would not be in the Quran. If these were small things, they would not be in the Quran.